next few months, we're going to be running through different components of Platform App Builder. We thought, given the year that we've just had, we're going to take it back to basics and really just sort of start with the fundamentals and grow on from there for Ladies Be Architects over the next year. So the first portion that we're going to focus on here is the Salesforce fundamentals and data modeling and data management part 1. Part 1 being the keyword here, and Vicky's going to explain that to you a little bit later. So before I kick off too much, I want to give a great big thank you to our sponsors, Otter Sever, who is a platinum sponsor, and our bronze sponsors, Southern Cloud and Capstorm as well. Without them, we wouldn't be able to come to you and hold these meetings with things such as Google Meet, with all of our licensing, hosting of our website, and just the resources that they're able to help provide us as well. So kicking off, I'm Adrienne. So I'm a business solutions consultant at Traction On Demand, based in Australia. So I'm one of our Australian ambassadors here. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for, about 7 years now. Mainly focused in the nonprofit space now, however, have worked with all of the clouds, 11 times Salesforce certified, and I've forgotten how to talk about myself this morning. So what I might do is put that lovely honour on to my co-presenter for this morning's meeting, Vicky Jeffrey.
So my name's Vicky. I'm a tech manager at a little, well, not little, but medium-sized insurance broker in Brisbane in Australia. I've been using Salesforce for about 10 years this year, I think. I'm 8x certified. What else can I tell you about myself? Salesforce MVP. I run the Brisbane user group with Beck, who's also on this call, and Trailhead Tuesday with her as well. Next slide.
I've forgotten that I'm a Salesforce MVP for like the millionth time in a row.
Yeah. So today we're going to go through the welcome, which we're doing now. We'll then go through our certification champions who've told us they've received certification over the last few months. Then we're going to go through the Salesforce fundamentals part of the certification and data modeling and management. Then after that, we'll do questions, but please do ask questions during the study session. It's an interactive study session, so it's not just sit there and listen. You can either put them in the chat, or you can, so I'm just reading the chat as we go, or you can just speak up. Next slide. Someone's just said they can't hear us. Can everyone else hear us? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So who's Ladies Be Architects? So it's 3 friends with a shared vision, started by Gemma Blizzard, and then joined quickly by Charlie and Susanna. Gemma's based in the UK, and Charlie and Susanna are based in the US. And then the next slide. Oh, back one. And then a couple of years ago, they were joined by Adrienne, myself, and Emily. We're all based in Brisbane in Australia, so we're the ANZ ambassadors for LBA at the moment.
So what we then do is we move on to our certification champions. So these are people who have achieved any Salesforce certification. It's usually over the last month or two, but given the end of 2020, we wanted to touch base with those who had achieved right back into October as well. There's only a few that told us about their certifications. So I want to give a shout out to Christy Brown and Sathya Barma, who both achieved data architecture and management designer certs over the last few months, as well as Vanita Prashar and Dee Ferreira, who have received sharing and visibility designer. Katie Perret, who accomplished her development lifecycle and deployment designer cert, and Jade Wong, who's accomplished Einstein Analytics, which I have no idea if it's still called that or they're still transitioning, but we're going to go with Einstein Analytics for the moment. If you've completed a cert in the last few months, or you want to tell us about it, you want to be announced in one of these certifications, or you want to pick up some cool Ladies Be Architects swag, you can find the link. I don't think it's quite on our website yet, but Vicky will share it after this meeting or sort of later towards the week for a form that you can fill in to let us know that you've achieved certification, so we can make sure that we're congratulating everyone for the well-deserved certification passes. And on that, I'm going to kick over to Vicky, who's going to get us started on explaining Platform App Builder and the first portion of this presentation.
So, can we go to the next slide?
There we go.
The platform.
Oh, has anyone else lost Vicky?
Yeah, Vicky's just frozen by the sounds at the important time.
I know.
Still frozen?
No, you're back.
Oh, good, good. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So when I started to build the study sessions, I'm outlined.
We've lost her again.
Oh no.
What I might do, Vicky, is I might just quickly to this slide if you're going to disappear. So what Vicky was trying to explain is that we started planning out these study sessions towards the end of last year. Now, towards the end of last year, this is what the exam guide looked like for Platform App Builder. So Salesforce Fundamentals was sitting at a solid 8%, while data modeling and management was sitting at 20%. Now, in true Salesforce fashion, they've decided to throw a curveball at us and have recently changed the weighting of all of these exams. And by that, Salesforce Fundamentals, I now believe, is about 23% of the exam. And they've kind of incorporated a whole heap of other elements that we were going to do as separate sessions into this. So don't worry, we will be covering off every portion of the exam throughout the next few months in these study sessions. However, what we're going to be touching on today in this particular session is just the original breakdown that we had. So these three key areas of Salesforce Fundamentals, as well as these three key areas of data modeling and management. And next month in our next study session, we'll start focusing on the additional areas of fundamentals and modeling and management as well. Sorry, Vicky, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if it doesn't work, I'll go to my phone, but I was just trying to work that out. Okay, so as Adrian's been saying, we'll cover these parts of the exam today. Sorry, I missed if you said that we'll do remainder of fundamentals. Now they have put a whole lot of what was in things like sharing and mobile and social and all sorts of things into fundamentals. So it's actually quite a large part of the exam now, so almost a quarter of the exam. So quite a bit to cover in there. All right, so today, so we go to the next slide, we're going to start with fundamentals, and we're going to start straight into declarative and programmatic customization. So starting with what is it? So when you're looking and you're wanting to develop in it, you've got two options, declarative and programmatic. So declarative being all those using clicks to develop in Salesforce. It's all those tools Salesforce provides us to be the programmatic side of it is using code in Salesforce. It's AppExchange, Lightning Web Components, Aura Components, and getting into JavaScript as well now. So what they want to cover is understand when to use declarative tools and when recognize as necessary, and understanding the boundaries of both. And Adrian's telling me I might need to switch to my phone, so I will do that. Ads, can you please just message me the Google Meet link to WhatsApp, and I will be back.
So I'll just give Vicky a little bit of a moment to sort of switch over there. But yeah, just to reiterate, we're going to be talking about the different types of declarative and programmatic customizations in Salesforce for the fundamentals portion. We're not going to be going into the deep detail level there. This is really focusing on the parts that you'll be using in Platform App Builder, but really giving you a clear understanding of the differences between all of the different platforms, when to use them, and what the thresholds are of each.
Okay, how's that?
That's better.
Excellent. Okay, sorry about that. I must have pretty bad internet here this morning. It's actually been raining, which is kind of unusual for for Brisbane. So maybe that has something to do with it. All right, so we'll go through some of the declarative and programmatic tools that are available to us. So in declarative, we're looking at things like workflow rules and process builder and flow, approval processes, validation rules, formula fields, roll-up summary fields, actions, Lightning App Builder, all of these things that go towards being able to create the functionality in Salesforce for your business process or your requirement. And then on the programmatic tool side, you've got Apex, web services, email services. You've got Visualforce and Lightning components. That's Aura and Lightning Web components. You've got APIs and you've got platform events. So that's just some kinds of things that are available to us. It's not a full list. And the key thing is that we understand what each one of these things does. It's not something we're going to go through today. We're going to give you more of a high level. But the requirement is that you do understand what each of these things actually does within Salesforce. Next slide. Okay, so pros and cons. Why would we use declarative over programmatic, and then why would we use programmatic over declarative? So with declarative, you've got speed. So if you're a solo admin, or if you're in a small company that doesn't want to spend a lot of money on developers, and declarative is where you are, right? So you've got it's speed and a quicker turnaround to be able to build something. There's no need to hire a coder. That's a big thing for a lot of companies. It's easy to customize. So if you need something changed very quickly, you can quite quickly go back into the system and change something. Might be that something small or something a bit larger. It's a quicker and simple problem resolution tool. It's low maintenance and cheaper. And it takes advantage, this is a key one, it does take advantage of future updates to tools and functionality that Salesforce provide. So if you create something programmatically, you might not be able to use the functionality that comes out in Spring 25 release. So you need to be thinking about that when you're creating something programmatically. It's easier to test, so you don't have to create test classes. And what are the pros of programmatic? So you've got more control. So you're not limited by what the declarative tools can provide. There's more flexibility, and you're not restricted by limitations. The cons. So obviously you have limitations with declarative programming, and it's not suited to complex requirements. So complex meaning that it's either going to be too complex to create in declarative programming, or it's going to be too complex that you're going to end up with a process builder with 100 pieces of criteria, and then it goes to a flow, and it's just too complex. So you really want to look at moving that into code. And what are the cons of programmatic? So that's higher maintenance. Obviously, you're going to need someone who understands code to be able to update or fix or develop further. So yeah, you need the coder needed to update. Okay, so the next one. So making the decision. So programmatic or declarative. This is a key one for the Platform App Builder cert. So you go through the process of thinking about your requirement and what you need to do. So is it possible to implement the feature using declarative tools? So immediately, if it's not, you cannot go down the declarative path. Is the feature complex or specialized? So as I said before, if it's too complex for creating it declaratively, or it's going to be a massive job to put it into a declarative process like a flow or a process builder, then maybe you need to be looking at programmatic development. Is complex integration needed? So do you need to integrate with something externally where it's quite complex and you're needing to create those integrations? Is a customized user interface needed? So if you can't create something that's using the out-of-the-box user interface tools, then you need to be looking at whether you create that in components or in a full Visualforce page, or however you want to create that page. And then also, what resources does the company have for future updates? So where is the company sitting? Are you quite happy? Do you have a coder sitting on board, or a team of coders sitting there that are able to quickly update? What are your requirements in that? Are you happy to wait and pay for a coder in the future? So that's a key point when you're really looking at whether you want to use programmatic or declarative tools for Salesforce. Next slide. So let's have a look at some scenarios. So I've tried to create some. It's actually really difficult to think of scenarios when you're trying to work out, hey, what is something really cool that we could build here when you do it all the time. So it's a funny thing. But here we've got a scenario where it's a wizard style feature is needed to create a case. And when they create that case, an associated credit request record, which is a custom object, needs to be created. We need to assign the case to a specific queue based on the customer priority field in the account. And we need to assign the custom priority record, which is the credit request record, to the finance agent for the account and send a notification via chatter to the finance agent. So here I'm going to need a tool to create the wizard. So I'm going to need some sort of tool that I can create a little screen flow to create that case and credit record. I need a queue or queues to assign the cases to, and a way to tell which owner should be assigned to that credit request record. Also a way to send a Chatterfinite notification. So when I break that down, a wizard can be created using a screen launched flow. So the case and credit request record can be created in that flow, both records in one flow. And then I can create some case queues to assign those cases to. Now, when I'm looking at how I'm going to identify the finance agent that I need to assign the credit request record to, I could use something like custom settings, or I might have some other criteria. Maybe the finance agent is attached to the account and I can access that. But I can still do that declaratively. So I can access that in the flow and assign that credit request record to that person. And then I can use the flow as well to create a chatter notification post and mention the owner. So you can see here that this solution is fully declarative. I'm not needing to create any code at all for this. Has anyone got any questions on this one? Okay, another scenario. So again, when to use declarative customization. So in this one, I've got when an opportunity is closed, won, and renewable, create a cloned opportunity for renewal and clone all those products attached to the original renewal for the new renewal. So process builder. So I can use a process builder to trigger when the opportunity is changed to closed, won, and renewable. I can use a custom field to show if an opportunity is renewable. So I might have some criteria behind that, a business process behind that, that tells me if it's renewable, or I might just have the user note that it is renewable. I can't clone and associate multiple products to the opportunity and process builder. So I need to look at something else. So what is it? I can actually do this in a flow. So the process builder will call an auto-launch flow. And the flow can be used, to clone that opportunity, its products, and to associate the products to the opportunity. So again, that's fully declarative. Next slide. All right, so when do we use programmatic customization? So in this case, a page is needed to show outstanding invoices with some pre-built filters. Checkboxes are needed to select which customers to send a personalized debtors SMS to, and an area on the screen to personalize and send the SMS. Now, is there a declarative solution for this? I can't think of one, particularly because we're wanting to add those checkboxes in to be able to tick them off and have some sort of business process run once we select send SMS. We also want to be able to customize that SMS and put in some personalized information to these people. So the page required is highly customized and it can't be fulfilled with the standard user interface. Parts of it you'll be able to do with some components, but parts of it you're not going to be able to do. So in this case, Lightning components or a Visualforce page will need to be created to create the page, and remembering we're moving more towards Lightning components. So for this one, a programmatic solution is needed. All right. Okay, so we also can use programmatic and declarative together. So in this case, an account has 5 related objects that need to be rolled up to do a total record count on the account itself for each related object. We want this displayed in a pretty component at the top of the page, just beneath the highlights panel. And we want it color-coded depending on what number is coming up for each item. The related objects all have lookup relationships to the account only. So in this one, a flow could be used to update fields on the account with the total record count of each custom object. So we're able to create a field on the account and add up all of those records below it for each of the related objects. But there are no standard components that could display the fields in the way that's required. So I'm going to need someone, or myself, but someone, to create a custom Lightning component in Apex to display the information in the way that is needed. And then I can add that component to the Lightning page. So there we've got Lightning App Builder or Lightning Page Builder. So in this case, you can see a declarative and programmatic solution can be used. So you're using flow, you're using fields, you're using Lightning Web Components, and you're using the Lightning App Builder to add that component to the page. Okay, any questions on any of those scenarios? Has anyone got something else they want to bring up that could be good?
Did you say that they're suggesting if you have a choice between a Visualforce page and a Lightning component, they're trying to push everyone's components?
Yeah, I mean, the Visualforce is still going to be supported, but there's a definite push towards Lightning Web Components. But there's no reason why you can't use Visualforce, but there are large amounts of Lightning Web Component content in certifications these days.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think the test is still going to refer back to using Process Builder to trigger on the change of something like the opportunity, as opposed to just doing it all in a flow?
Can you say that again? Sorry, I missed the first part.
Do you think is the test leaning towards still using Process Builder instead of Flow? Because we can do all of that with Flow now to determine.
That's right. Yeah. So I don't know the answer to that question. I know there is a push towards Flow, and that there's some talk out there about how Flow will replace Process Builder.
Right.
But whether they've caught up with that in the exam yet, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry, I can just sort of speak to that quickly as well. So I was on the panel when we rebuilt Platform App Builder about 12 months ago. Rebuilding an exam takes quite a long time. Actually, I think I was on that panel for about 6 to 8 months while we were rebuilding it, and then it's got to go through beta testing and then get sent back out. So I know most of the content that we were building back when still had questions around Process Builder in it and Flow and when to use each. I don't see it being redeveloped for some time yet.
Yeah. And even the things that they are bringing out now, there are some limitations with doing the same things in Process Builder that we were doing in Process Builder. But it looks really promising. Okay, next slide. Okay, so just a few declarative use cases. If you want to create or update a record when a related record changes, there's Process Builder. Like I could have put Flow in there as well, so I probably should. Delete a record when the value of a field changes, so we can now use Flow for that, which is fairly recent. Assign records to users based on custom criteria, so again we can use Process Builder and Flow for that. Customize pages, so we've got page layout, we've got Lightning pages, we've got components, all for customizing our pages now, and we've also got dynamic forms, which I didn't put in there, so that's something new. And I don't know if it's in the set, but it is something that you need to understand. I think it's still only available for custom objects, not standard. Creating a wizard, so we can use Flow for that. So we can use a screen-based Flow to create multi-page type wizards. Ensure a field is populated if another field is entered. We've got validation rules for that. Send an opportunity for approval if a discount is applied. So we've got approval processes. Show a calculation based on fields in a record or a related record. That's formula field. And show a record on a record. Show a field on a record based on the number of related records of a specific object. So if we've got a master detail relationship, we can use roll-up summary fields there. You can't do roll-up summary fields out of the box with lookup relationships, but there are tools available to you like declarative lookup roll-up summaries. Not in the exam, but it is an extra tool that is available. Clone a record and include related records. So we've got Process Builder and auto-launched flows for for that one. Okay, next slide. What about our programmatic use cases? So here we've got things like custom web service, custom email service, and complex validation, which we can use Apex for. And custom user interface, so we can use Visualforce and Lightning components for those. And when we say Lightning components, that's Aura components and also the newer Lightning web components. Override standard actions in Lightning, we can use Lightning components for that. Custom requirements, Lightning components in Visualforce and Apex. Complex sharing rules, we can use Apex for that. And bulk operations, we can also use Apex. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that concludes the declarative and programmatic part of Salesforce fundamentals. Are there any questions around programmatic and declarative development? Nope. Okay. So AppExchange, another part of fundamentals. So AppExchange is a Salesforce marketplace. There's paid and free apps on it. You can browse by type and product collections and industry collections. And one key thing here is that Salesforce Lab solutions are free. So they're apps built by Salesforce employees, and they are pretty good. There's quite a few of them in there that are absolutely fantastic, and they're all free. So on the side, let me go back. Oh, sorry. So on the side here, you can see a screenshot of AppExchange and the kinds of things that you can see in there. So we're looking at some sponsored solutions, so people that have paid to be on the first page of AppExchange. And then down the bottom there, you can see that we've got solutions by types. We've got apps, Bolt, Flow, Lightning Data, and components, which we'll go through next. Yep. Okay, next slide. What is it on AppExchange? So we've got apps, full applications. So these can either be absolutely full applications that you can install in your system and not have to worry about doing any further development, depending on your requirement, or they might be partial. And I'll have some examples soon of those. So components, so Aura and Lightning Web components that people have built and put on the AppExchange for you to add functionality to your own pages and apps. Bolt solutions, so these are community templates targeted at industries. You can bolt them, which is why they're called bolts, directly into Community, or now called Experience Cloud, to provide that functionality for your specific industry if you don't want to build your own. Or if you want to get that basis, that core functionality first before you add more functionality to it. Lightning Data. So this is third-party data and data quality. So if you're looking at something like wanting to enrich or clean your data, that's where you're going to go for Lightning Data. Flow solutions. So we've got flow actions, so portions of flow, and also full flow templates. And consultants. So there is a list of available consultants or Salesforce partners and developers. Alrighty, so here's some examples. So in apps, you can see here there's one for Salesforce Labs. So that's build user productivity and Lightning experience using in-app guidance. So they've created some in-app guidance functionality for you to just download and use. And then you get something like MailChimp, where it's an actual integrated app that will have some sort of functionality in Salesforce when you download it. Now it says free, but you probably need a MailChimp account to actually use it. And we've got components. So again, Salesforce Labs, there is an enhanced related list app there. Might be great. And it's got some pretty good reviews. So there's 4-star reviews on that one. And then Time Warp. So that's a component for viewing related records on one beautiful interactive timeline. It's something that someone's built. It's also free, but there will be paid apps as well for that. Lightning Data. So here is where we're going to get enrich our data. You know, this one's got US business data solutions in it, and then some prospecting information. But the key idea behind Lightning Data is that you're getting data, but you're also enriching the data that you currently have. Flow solutions. So this is fairly new and really good if you want to download something or actually find something that fits your business process. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it gives you that template to understand how a flow does work. Both of these are Salesforce Labs, so adding multiple related records and automatic omnichannel skill assessment. And then bolts. So here you can see that we've got an insurance bolt for community, and then we've got a water cooler bolt, which looks like it might be an employee style community. Excuse me. Okay, next slide. So when are you going to use AppExchange? So if you've got a certain functionality that you want to build, that you need, really should be going to AppExchange to look at whether there is something available to you to help you. So you're going to find existing solutions to your requirements there. If it's as complex, it's going to save you from custom development. But there's a bunch of considerations that you need to think about. So cost, stakeholder needs, technical needs. Is it managed or unmanaged? And I'll talk about that soon. How much further development do you want to do in it? Is it a fit for this particular requirement and for your company? Do you need to pay for it? How much is it going to be over the long term compared to how much it might take you to build it, etc.? So you look at what type of solution. Is it a Lightning component? Is it an app? Or what are you looking for? Look at functionality. What does it need to do? And does it fit your criteria? Is it within your budget? And consider development costs when you're looking at that. Does it meet your stakeholder needs? Always install into Sandbox first. And then technical considerations. So is it Lightning compatible? Do you need to use it with other products? Is there integration that it needs to work with? So when you're doing this, they will ask you these kinds of questions around why you should be using AppExchange and what are the considerations around why you would decide to use an AppExchange app or component, etc. Okay. So managed and unmanaged packages. So packages are collections that hold code and metadata, and they will be an app, they will be a component, etc., that you can access from the AppExchange. There are two types on the Exchange. There's actually a third, which you can create yourself inside the org, but this is what's on AppExchange. So managed package. So that's used to distribute and sell by partners. So they might create a specific app, be it project management or an insurance-related app or something that they're wanting to sell, and they're going to lock that down, either partially or fully. They can also use license handling. Sorry, they can also use license management application for license handling. So if they're charging you a fee, they'll be able to control how many people are actually using their app. It's upgradable by the creator, so whoever's created it can upgrade it. And destructive changes cannot be performed. So they might allow you to create certain changes within their the managed package, but they might not allow you, for example, to remove a field or change a field, which might have a destructive result on how the app works. An unmanaged package. So this is open source. You can edit it. The creator has no control on the installed components. They don't generally upgrade it, or they can do. And so it's really just a whole bunch of code and metadata functionality that you can download and play with as you please. All right, next one. So what does an AppExchange listing look like? So with an app, this one's using Odyssever, which is one of our sponsors. So it's going to have graphics and videos. It's going to have sometimes a demo. See on the right there, it says watch demo. It'll have reviews, really important, read the reviews. It'll often have a price, so you get an idea of whether it's free or what kind of pricing that you're looking at, whether it's a per company, per user. And it'll have the rating and an overview. So just what does it do? What does it target? Who's it targeted towards? And obviously you've got a Get It Now button, which will take you through to installation. Consultants and developers, they have an expertise tab as well, which I obviously haven't shown here. So you're able to see what their expertise is. Okay, this one. So the bottom of the AppExchange listing. Social impact, so it tells you their social impact. So Odyssever has pledged 1% of their revenue, resources, etc. to charitable causes. And you have some company info about Odyssever, so when were they founded, how do you get in touch with them, etc. Some compatibility feature requirements. So is it Lightning ready? What edition do you need? So this one's Enterprise and up. And then some further info. So they've provided some customer testimonials and some data sheets and white pages there. Okay, next one. Right, so installation. So AppExchange apps can be installed directly into production but obviously you should really put them in Sandbox. Make sure you have the right one before you do it. And I'm not looking at anyone in particular in this in the study section who will do that. I've done it too. Test drives. So you can get a test drive and to give the item a go, and that's in a developer org, usually configured by the provider, and also free trials. So that's available to download for your Sandbox, and it'll often come with sample data. And then who gets access? So when you're installing, you've got 3 options. So install for admins, install for all users, and install for specific profiles. So you're able to say who gets access specifically to your app. Okay, some AppExchange scenarios. So I'm just going to go through some things that are available. Sometimes I name names, sometimes I don't, but I'm just going to give you an idea of the things that you can get from AppExchange in apps and components, etc. So we want to extend out of the box functionality. We've got form builders, we've got master delete, we've got declarative lookup rollup summaries, which I mentioned before, we've got user interface tools, SMS, etc. Now I'm going to quickly go through these because I know I'm running out of time. So custom functionality, so pre-built flows, pre-built reports, pre-built Lightning components. You can find consultants. We'll go to the next slide, Adrian. You've got pre-built communities by industry, health without the M, and insurance, or by requirements, a customer experience or employee onboarding. You've got connection to external systems. So you might want Slack, Xero, DocuSign. You've got those available in there. And you've also got admin and developer tools. So user reporting, field reviewing, DevOps, data loaders, all that kind of thing is in there for you to access. And the next slide. And then marketing automation. So you've got lead captures and loyalty trackers and digital asset management, all sorts of marketing items there. And then data quality, so cleaning and enriching data, data insights, finding prospects, and you can get company information updated within your own. Okay, so that is AppExchange. I'm going to pass over to Adrian. I know we're running out of time, so we'll grab questions at the end. And if we can't, we'll get back to you about any questions.
Sorry, Vicky, didn't mean to put a little rush on there.
You're right.
So Pearl has just asked as well when we can expect this to be uploaded. We usually give it a little bit of time for us to wrap everything up and to upload it. So Vicky, would you say early next week at the latest, or?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Vicky. So yeah, moving on, I guess. And again, as we mentioned, because Salesforce has very kindly changed the layout of this exam, we will be covering the additional portions of Salesforce fundamentals in the coming study sessions as well. But for the remainder of this one, we did just want to touch on data modeling and management and some of the components in this. What we're really going to focus on is different relationship types, schemas, and field types for this portion. So just as an overview, and you have no idea how hard it is to find a Salesforce schema, you'd think that this is something they use in their marketing regularly. It's not. If you Google Salesforce data model or Salesforce schema, there's a million documents other people have created, but nothing that's very helpful. But at its core, we've added this one in because it does just focus on the account, contact, and opportunity models. So your account sitting in the middle with your multiple contacts being able to sit to one side and your multiple opportunities being able to sit to the other with some of the relationship types that we're going to talk about further through the slides. So what we wanted to start off here was the different types of relationships that Salesforce offers. Just going to put my dog on the floor. So Salesforce has 5 distinct types of relationships that you can have when you're utilizing Salesforce and creating additional fields. The first of which being an external lookup relationship. So an external lookup relationship facilitates between internal Salesforce objects and external objects that you may have connected. When you create them, they actually use the external ID field on the parent external object, and that's matched to the external lookup field inside Salesforce. So this is if you've got objects that you're using that aren't key Salesforce objects internally. You have an indirect lookup relationship. So an indirect lookup relationship links a child external object to a parent standard object. So it's kind of in relation with our external lookup relationship there. Instead of linking 2 parents together, you're linking a parent internal with a child external. We've then got our hierarchical relationship. So a hierarchical relationship really only exists on the user record. So it lets you link users together. So you might have a manager, you might have a direct report, you may have an internal supervisor. These are all hierarchical relationship fields. I always feel like I said that word wrong. Hierarchical relationship fields that link users together. And then moving on to two of the more common relationship types that you're going to find in Salesforce are our lookup relationship, which is responsible for linking two internal Salesforce objects together. For example, you may want to link a case to another case, is a common use case there. And then you've got your master detail lookup relationship. So a master detail lookup relationship, much like your lookup, closely links objects together. So what a master detail does is it actually prevents you from creating a record without relating it to the object that you've got in the other lookup. So some of the examples for these here are things like expense reports and expense line items. And a common use case for these, or something that you may see every day in Salesforce, are things like opportunities and accounts. So you'll notice that you physically cannot create an opportunity inside Salesforce without first linking it to an account record. Master detail relationships also give you, I guess, some additional functionality there, and they're in charge of controlling things like your sharing rules. So if you've got a master detail relationship, the child in a master detail relationship always inherits the sharing of the parent or the record that it's linked to, as opposed to a lookup relationship, which really just relates the two together. They still have separate owners, separate sharing rules, and things like that. So we're going to run through a couple of scenarios using the two key areas, being lookups and master detail relationships, here for a moment, and describing when you would use each. Now, I know in Platform App Builder, and I think there's actually a couple other certs that use it as well, they do give you a few scenarios like these where you actually have to work out what the best type of relationship is going to be in terms of sharing roll-up fields and relationships. So in this scenario, we've got Global Logistics sending a survey to every customer logistics manager who, once they've ordered and completed a order. So survey results should be created inside Salesforce and be recorded against the contact who submitted them. And then only the account and contact owner should have access to these results. So first of all, we're assuming that Salesforce is using the standard data model whereby contact access is controlled by account access. So we're going to ask ourselves a few questions to determine what type of relationship should be used here. So first, does this require an additional object? Can we just put the survey on the account? And that way only people need access to the account to access it. But in this instance, because surveys can contain multiple questions, they can fill them out multiple times, we're going to be creating an additional object for our survey. The next, we're going to ask ourselves if a survey response can be created without having a contact associated to it. So this is where maybe our master detail comes in, and we need to look through, okay, can we create one of these records? Is it simply one where we must have and it's dependent upon, or is this one where we can just utilize a standard lookup field? But in this instance, Global Logistics needs to know who submitted the survey for follow-up purposes and who they should be contacting about the survey responses. And then our final question that we're going to ask is who should have access to the records of the survey results? And this is where we mentioned before with master detail relationships and those sharing rules that come into play. So only those with access to the account should be able to see the survey results. So in this instance, we've determined that the link between the survey and the contact and account should be a master detail relationship type. It means that we don't need to go through the trouble of adding an additional sharing rules to be able to tell, okay, who can see the survey results. We also know that we're physically not going to be able to create a survey result without having an individual or an account related to it. In our next example, we're going to again look at Global Logistics and how they're using the data in their system. So Global Logistics also has a number of different shipping providers when they're sending out parcels. In a number of cases, customers have developed a preferred shipping provider. So you can imagine that these are both types of accounts. You'll have a customer account, and then you may have a different record type for your shipping providers. Now, because they've developed a preferred shipping provider, the account managers for each customer account at Global Logistics need to be able to easily see who their customer's preferred shipping provider is. So again, we're going to ask ourselves a few different questions here. So the first of which is, can multiple customers have the same preferred shipping provider? And the answer is yes. You're not going to have a unique shipping provider for every customer in your org. I mean, you could, but I don't know that many shipping providers. Can a shipping provider exist without a customer's preferred provider? So without being related to a customer? And the answer is yes. So sometimes a shipping provider is new, or they're going out of business, so they might not be related to anyone anymore, or they may just be being set up in the organization, or maybe they're just one that you use occasionally that unfortunately isn't anyone's favorite. Global Logistics is still required to record a record of all shipping providers that they've ever had a relationship with or that they've been doing deals with. And the third here is, do shipping providers require an account manager? So this account manager here is important when you're determining if you're going to need a master detail relationship or a lookup relationship, as records that are master detailed, don't have an owner field. So the moment you create a master detail relationship, the owner of the record becomes the owner of the parent in the master detail. So in this instance here, staff need to see who manages the relationship for each shipping provider. And I probably should have mentioned the important detail here is that these are both account records. So even if we did want to create a master detail relationship, you can't master detail an existing object in the system if it's already being parent to something else, or you're master detailing it to something else already. So in this instance, the solution for this particular one is a lookup relationship. So we would create a lookup on the customer account record to the shipping provider account record. So we can then just say, okay, this is this person's preferred shipping provider. And then we're going to move on to junction objects. So this is a key one that Salesforce also likes to mention throughout all of their exams, and is kind of a hybrid, or can be a hybrid, between master detail relationships and lookup relationships, or multiple master detail relationships. So in this scenario, HireForce is a recruitment company responsible for recruiting Salesforce professionals. They require a new system to track job applications. So in this system, a candidate can apply for multiple positions at a time, and a job application must be able to store who the candidate that's applying for the position is and the position that they're applying for. So both candidate and position are being used as separate objects inside Salesforce. So a candidate may just be a standard contact record, and a position can be a custom object there. For the purposes of all these, a job application, again, as I mentioned, must have each of them, and a recruiter must be easily able to see the total number of positions a candidate has applied for, as well as the total number of applicants for a position. So in here, we're going to start asking a couple of different questions again. So the first, can candidates apply for multiple positions? So because they can, the answer is yes. Can multiple candidates apply for the same position? Also in this instance, it's yes, which means that now we can't go down the standard route of you just using a regular master detail or a regular lookup relationship. You can't have a lookup on the contact to the position that they've applied for, because they could have applied for multiple, and we can't have a lookup on the position to the candidate because multiple people can be applying for that position, which requires us to create an additional object that we're going to use to connect between the two. So that additional object, in this instance, job application, now must be able to look up between both a candidate and a position with what we call a junction object. Now, the other key question here is, does information need to be summarized on a related object? Now that we've determined we need that additional object, we need to know what type of relationships we're going to be putting on it, whether it be lookup or whether it be master detail. Now, because we've mentioned that summary information has to be used, so we want to see the total number of positions a candidate has applied for, as well as the total number of applicants for a position, we're going to want to use a master detail relationship on our Junction object. Master details, as I mentioned, have a number of additional capabilities. One of those being included is roll-up summary fields. So if you've got a master detail where it's required, it means that you can use Salesforce's standard roll-up summary fields to roll up the number of candidates or the number of applicants for a position. Then we're going to move on and quickly just touch on, in addition to our relationship types, the other field types that you can have inside Salesforce here as well. So I'm not going to go over each of them individually. Some of you may have seen them all before. We've got our auto numbers, checkboxes, our different types of texts, pick lists, roll-up summaries that we've just touched on if you've got a master detail relationship, and our 5 types of lookups over the right-hand side. So how do you know when you're selecting the appropriate field type or what field type you should be selecting for the other types that aren't your relationships? So we need to determine what type of information we're trying to capture. Are we trying to capture a phone number? Are we trying to capture text, a mixture of both? Are we trying to capture a yes, no response? And how are we wanting to display that information being the next question? So for example, checkboxes and pick lists. At what point do you use a checkbox? And at what point do you use a yes, no pick list? If you want the information to be displayed as either an always no or an always yes, you would use a checkbox. However, if you wanted someone to be able to select the difference between yes and no, so that you can tell whether they've just forgotten to select a value versus whether they've left it omitted by default, then you would use a pick list field as opposed to a checkbox. Also, if you've got a number field, for example, so Australian postcodes are 4 digits, 4 numbers. In this instance, we would probably use a text field instead of a number field, because the number field goes ahead and it adds that comma in where it's trying to separate the thousands and the hundreds, whereas postcodes wouldn't have that. So we use a text field instead. Will this field be reused in the future? So this is important if you're determining whether to use, for example, a global pick list, or if you're going to be using a standard pick list with just values that you add in. Multi-select versus checkbox, which is a big debate that I'm not going to get into in the next 3 minutes. But there are a couple of different instances where a multi-select pick list might not be as beneficial as checkboxes for reporting purposes. Maybe you've got subscription preferences. It's easier to check a box to say, yes, they opt in for this, this, and this, as opposed to selecting multiple of those values, especially if you're using them in things like integration to be able to opt in and out of different marketing campaigns. And again, if the information will be reported on and what it's going to look like when we report on that information. So changing a field's field type. So this is if you've created an existing field and you've maybe decided that it's not the right one, you need to change it or, make some adaptations to it. So the important thing to note here is that only certain field types can be changed. And if you change any others, they can result in a massive loss of data. So if you change, for example, a date field to a date time field, you're going to lose the value of all existing records in the system. Now, in saying that, not all field types can be changed. There are certain types of fields, such as a formula field, that you can't change to another type of field. Other considerations include that you can't change a field type when it's being used in automation or code because it's going to break. If a field is shield encrypted, you can't change it. And some other fields just have some other basic restrictions when changing them. And also, when you're changing a field, the amount of existing data you have in your system also affects the changing of that field. So imagine you've got a custom field in an account object and you have 400,000 accounts and you're going ahead and changing that. That's going to take a lot of time to recalculate and either delete all of that data or change all of that data behind the scenes. So you may see some locking on your Salesforce org. So I'm not going to touch on each of these, but these are the type of fields that will loss in complete data loss. So the ones on the left-hand side when you're changing any of these fields to either any type or a particular type is going to result in complete data loss, unretrievable. So it's always important that when you go to change a field type, that you take a backup of any data that you're using first. And those on the right-hand side have conditional data loss. So they'll only lose data if you're changing it to these particular types of fields. And I'm aware it is 8 o'clock, so we're gonna work on wrapping this up just now. These are some of the other change restrictions that I mentioned. I'm gonna leave it up and it's going to be in the recording for you to read over. But as I mentioned, formula fields can't be changed. Auto numbers can only be changed to text. And there is a lot of conditions around relationships. So if you're converting a master detail to a lookup field, you're mostly in the clear. However, if you're converting a lookup field to a master detail, you need to make sure that, as I mentioned, because those records can't physically exist without the parent, that the parent field is filled in all of these instances before you can convert. When you're converting to, from example, a long text area down, information's automatically going to be truncated. So you're not going to lose this data completely, but you will lose everything over 255 characters, which is the standard text field or whatever length you've put in. And rich text fields can only be converted to a long text area. That is me wrapping all of that up quick. I'm aware that we are at time. But does anyone have any questions? I've seen, I guess, one come through in the chat, but does anyone have any others for both either myself or Vicky?
Feel free to contact us via Twitter, etc. if you have anything after this.
Yep.
Okay.
So then next up, just before we wrap, we will have our next study session, again, touching on fundamentals and data modeling. And yes, we will be posting the slide deck along with the recording as well. So Vicky and I will make sure that when we do upload it to YouTube, that we have the link for the slides in the description of YouTube as well. So our next study session touching on these again will be on the 25th of March. And you can expect that around a similar time as we had now. So 9 p.m. GMT, that's the right time. So
yeah.
Next steps, if you wanted to find out a little bit more in between now and the next study session, you do have the Studying for the Platform App Builder exam trail and the App Customization Specialist Super Badge that's really going to be able to help you get some of those fundamentals there as well. And on that note, as Vicky mentioned, we're both on Twitter, we're both on LinkedIn. Feel free to contact us. We're also both first names, so Vicky and Adrian at ladies-b-architects.com. We had to move from our Arc Ladies one, long story, but Ladies Be Architects, just hyphen separated there if you want to contact either of us as well. Yeah, on behalf of Vicky and I want to thank you all for attending this morning, this evening, this afternoon session. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are and evening. Oh, yeah, I will just post my email in the chat here as well.
I'll stay on and answer a couple of those questions. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really enjoyed having you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
What other questions do we have?
Just covering relationships and account and person account. So I think that might be the next one.
Yeah, different types of accounts and person accounts, because then we've got to touch on things like household accounts, so they'll be covered in the next session as well.
Yeah.
And there's, oh, I missed one further up. Can you repeat the information about in a lookup relationship, the owner of for lookup relationships? So if anyone's watching the recording and asked that question at the end, essentially with lookup relationships both have their separate owners, so you don't need to worry about owners in a lookup relationship. However, in master detail relationship, the child in the master detail doesn't have an owner. Its owner is inherited from the parent in the master detail. So where you've got things like expenses and expense line items, the expense line items will be owned by whoever owns the expense. And was there anything else that we've missed?
It's just those further things which we've put in the next step. So I'll just copy those links and put them in the chat as well.
So in terms of best study tools there, so study tools, definitely there are some great resources available on Trailhead as well. We do also have, I guess, a couple of personal recommendations. Again, none of these are, I guess we're not sponsored or supported, but I have personally in the past used things like Udemy and Focus on Force as well. They have some really great resources for practice exams and learning. Vicky, do you have any others that you would use as
No,
resources?
I use those two as well. So Trailhead, those two, and you can find other people's content as well about Platform App Builder. If you just do a Google search, there is quite a bit out there.
Oh, a good list of blogs. I don't have one handy on me at the moment.
No, I don't either. I know Jen Lee has a really good blog. Let me find that for you. Maybe it's something that we could compile as a bunch of blogs about Platform App Builder.
Yeah, I think that might be worthwhile again. So maybe in addition to posting the slides for this presentation in the description of the YouTube, when we post it, we'll post some, I guess, helpful blogs. And Vicky and I will again reshare these links as well for the preparation for the Super Badge and the Trailhead Trail as well for preparing for your exam.
Okay. If there's no more questions, we'll wrap up. And thanks, everybody. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you all and see you next time. Bye.